Crossover. So this is the theme for this morning. So when Kim told me that the theme was crossover, I was thinking to myself, I wasn't sure exactly what that meant at first, and the first thing I thought of was this. So watch this. This is Allen Iverson, a young Allen Iverson, crossing over Michael Jordan. And I remember I was like 8 years old. I was a little kid, and I wasn't allowed to swear or curse when I was a kid, but I was like, oh shit, like he broke his ankles. But anyway, that's not what I mean by crossover. That's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the wisdom of the late and great Biggie Smalls. So he said this: the key to staying on top of things is treat everything like it's your first project. Like when you're an intern, just stay hungry. And what stands out to me here, and the theme I'm going to talk to you guys about with crossover, is treat everything like it's your first project. What I want to do this morning is walk you through a quick story, just my background, upbringing, because I think it's going to influence why I do the things that I do today and why you all should care about that and what you can take away into this awesome Friday that we have in Chicago. So, I'm from the south side of Chicago. They call it Chirac. Now, this is a bit of a controversial term. I'm not a big fan of glorifying the notion of violence and crime in Chicago, but I will say that this is my reality. This was my reality when I was growing up. It was tough. Living on the south side where I grew up, you see a lot of this. You see a lot of people get shot, killed, a lot of bad things going on. And this is related to my life because I kind of got, I was stuck there, and I wasn't sure what to do in that environment to be productive because you're scared. You look out the window and, on one hand, you look at the TV and you see the news and there's a war going on, and then you look out the window and there's another one. So as polarizing as he is, I think Kanye had it right in describing this way. But on top of that, the most fearsome foe in Chicago is the weather. It's so cold, so in the summer, you got to worry about going outside, but in the winter, you want to stay in. In addition to this, money was kind of tight. Growing up, we didn't have a lot, my family. So I had a lot of these. You guys familiar with fried bologna sandwiches? So that's a hood snack, ladies and gentlemen. But in addition to that, my mother is half Honduran. So I would make up ghetto concoctions like this, which I call a peanut butter and jelly quesadilla. So I had a lot of those. And I also had a lot of this. Anybody know what this is? Make sure you know what this is. Lumpia, yeah. My mother's also half Filipino. So half Honduran, half Filipino. Dad's black, so I got all this mutt stuff going on. But anyway, so growing up in the south side, I went to this kindergarten, Shoesmith. And what was interesting about going to school here was I sucked at school, even as a little kid. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was really hard for me to read. I struggled learning how to read. I remember trying to spell the word computer, and again, I couldn't curse as a kid, but in my head, I had this shitty feeling of just not being able to do well in school and spell. So I struggled in school, but at home, I was lucky enough to have a Nintendo. So I played this game, Zelda. Some of you may know it. But what's awesome about Zelda is that it's an RPG. RPG stands for role-playing game, and I love these games because what's different about RPGs in video games is there's lots of reading involved. So what's interesting about playing Zelda was my mom watched me playing this game, and she couldn't keep up when I was playing along because I was going through the text so fast to complete all the stories and missions and everything. So I was teaching myself to read because I was motivated to beat this game. So that was amazing. So in addition to using video games as an escape, from that reality, that harsh, cold, broke reality of being on the south side of Chicago, worried about what's happening on the streets, I used video games to basically not only teach myself how to read, but also just to kind of create my own little world. So that's what I did. So I played lots of games growing up. Mario Paint, Mortal Kombat, and NBA Jam together. But more importantly, I played these RPGs, these role-playing games. So this is another game called Final Fantasy VII, and it's one of my favorite games, one of the best games of all time. But I just kind of, I lost myself in this world. But then I transitioned into computers and music. I got really into this. So from playing video games, I was wondering how it worked and what it was about, and I got really good at them. I dove really deep. But then I transitioned, and I started putting together computers, buying cheap hardware, and trying to piece them together. And I loved hip-hop, so I will be referencing many rappers as we go through this. But there's this fun piece of software. I'm almost sure nobody here knows what this is. Does anybody know? Nope, it's not Fruity Loops. Oh, okay, I knew this would happen. So it's called Hip Hop EJ, okay? And it was the future of music. I guess that didn't turn out to be the case, but I loved the software because all I did was stay home and make beats all day, and it was so much fun. But anyway, I wasn't going to be the next Timbaland, so I decided to transition into something a little more efficient. So I learned how to make money with software and music, but I did it with two things. One, this thing. You guys recognize this is the Napster logo. And this thing, Nero Burning ROM. So you can put two and two together right now. But basically what happened in high school is I was kind of like Hustle Man, like Tracy Morgan was Hustle Man and Martin Lawrence, the TV show, where I would have my trench coat with my CDs. I was selling Nelly's Sweat and Suit and Windows XP copies in high school to make money. Yeah, so the theme was in high school was trying to sell things to make money. So in addition to selling software, I also sold trees. Now, I know what you're thinking. Black dude, Southside Chicago, selling trees. But it's not the kind that you think. I actually sold Christmas trees, okay? So I sold Christmas trees, not those. But I don't know why I got obsessed with trees, but I sold trees in the winter, and then in the summers, I actually removed trees. So I did like this side job with this guy who worked for ComEd who would remove trees to avoid electrical lines or whatever. So I helped him do that, and it was amazing money for a 15-year-old. So I crossed over into sports after doing all this work. While I was working and trying to make money, get through high school, I also got really into sports. Track and field was my passion, my love, it still is. So I got really into that, so much so I competed in National Junior Olympic competitions for about 8 years. That was great. But the important part here is that I lost my connection to technology. I was really into computers, music, software, all this, video games, but then I just became obsessed with sports, so much so that I decided that I wanted to get into the NFL. I wanted to go to the NFL. So I trained really hard. I would practice all day, all night. I still, tried to stay focused on school, but sports was my life. And then transitioning into college, getting recruited to run track and play football, I thought that was what I was going to do. Lo and behold, something terrible happened. Blew out my back, right? So what do you do now? So I'm like, shit, what am I gonna do? Like I went all in on being this athlete, and that's not working out. So what am I gonna do next? So I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate to have gotten some scholarships, and I was very lucky to get into Northwestern. One of the best things that have ever happened to me, right? So the experience that I got here was amazing, but I'll tell you a little bit about day one. When I got there, like I said, growing up, didn't have much. So as far as my values were and what was important to me, I thought money was the thing that I wanted. Because growing up, that was the thing we didn't have. And that's where I saw all the problems coming from, was we didn't have money, so that's what I need to do here. So when I asked the question, okay, I'm at Northwestern, how do I make the most money? The answer, I thought, was business, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to do finance, consulting, investment banking, that kind of thing, because that's how people make money. So I did that. I studied econ, finance, consulting, got really into all the business clubs, investment banking clubs. This moment in my life, college is kind of like, there's the Bruce Wayne and then there's the Batman. So Bruce Wayne was doing the finance, and then Batman was like, all right, let's start some startups. So I joined, I was employee number 1 at a company called Context Media, which has been around for almost 9 years now. I was 18 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I had 2 other guys that were the co-founders, and they were upperclassmen. And don't ask me how I got into this. I just got lucky. Pursuing all my business stuff, I met these 2 guys, and this company is, a multi-million-dollar business now. It's amazing. But my freshman year in college, at 18 years old, we have $250,000 in an office downtown, and I'm skipping classes to run this business to put LCD screens in doctors' offices. So that was amazing, and it was a ridiculous crossover for me, because here I am in one life studying finance, consulting, investment banking, economics, and this other life where I'm like trying to build this company and hire people and fire people twice my age, which was amazing. So that was freshman year. Sophomore year, I transitioned from context media to starting a couple barbershops. Now don't ask me how I got into this, and it's kind of ironic given my current haircut, but it's all good. I just decided that I wanted haircuts to cost me $15 and not $20. So I decided that I was going to start a barbershop. It was kind of weird, but I did it. Opened up a couple on the south side. That went well. But I learned some really important, valuable business lessons there, but no time to talk about them now. So if you want to know, we have Q&A to talk about that. So that is Batman. This is Bruce Wayne. I got an offer to work for UBS, investment banking. This is my junior year in college. And M&A division, actually right down, like not far from here, down the street. At the UBS Chicago office. And what's amazing about this opportunity was I ran the numbers, and that summer as an intern, I would have made more than what my family was making at the time in a year. So this was a big deal. This was a big choice I had to make. It was a big decision where it's like, do I intern at this investment banking, thing, or with all this startup experience I have now, I've started this company, I was a part of a, high growth startup. What do I really care about? What am I here to do? Am I here for the money, or am I here for something more, or something else? So in the meantime, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I decided that investment banking wasn't exactly the lifestyle that I wanted to live, and I was more passionate about entrepreneurship. But I didn't know where I wanted to start next. So instead of crossing straight over into another venture, I decided that I wanted to figure out how to invest in startups. So there's another firm in Chicago called OCA Ventures. It's a venture capital firm, one of the largest here in the city. And I don't know how, but I snuck my way in there. I convinced the CEO to hire me as an analyst, competing with, MBAs from Kellogg and Booth and Harvard and stuff like that. And I don't know how, but I forced my way in the door, and Jim Dugan, the CEO, let me in. And that was amazing. So I had this incredible experience at the end of college where I was able to work for a venture capital firm at 21 years old, which was super cool. So when I graduated, I worked for another company, called Sandbox. Sandbox Industries. It's another venture capital firm in Chicago. But what was interesting about Sandbox at the time was, in addition to investing, they also had an incubator division. So I worked for Sandbox's incubator, where my job was to come up with ideas and help start them up. I had gotten to this point now where I developed enough business and sales and operational skills where I could convince a company like Sandbox that I would be a good founder in residence or entrepreneur in residence to help them come up with new ideas. But something happened where about 5 months into this job, I realized that something was off, something was wrong. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was this business guy, I was this idea guy. I could put together a financial model, help brainstorm ideas, and come up with the operations and marketing plan. But it's so awesome to be here because what I lacked was what I see in this room, which was the ability to actually create things, to make things, to be creative. Whenever I had an idea in my head that I wanted to make real, I had to ask someone else to do it. I had to try to talk to them and convince them to take what was in my head and translate it onto a screen. And that was problematic. So I quit Sandbox, cold. And with no experience, I set out to learn how to make software. I was going to teach myself how to code, how to design, and how to take all those ideas in my head and make them real. Because at this point, I finally realized that my happiness was not derived from money. It wasn't derived from making a bunch of money or having this lifestyle or having these nice things. None of that mattered. What mattered to me, ultimately, was helping people. That's where I derived most of my happiness, was impacting other people's lives in better ways, making the world around me just a bit better with everything I did. So when I went into this world of software and learning how to do it, and felt like this, like I met this guy, right? This is the ultimate crossover moment because I took the red pill, finally, right? I was really nervous about it. I wasn't sure what to do. But I took that red pill and I said, I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to enter this world that I just have no idea how it works. And that's exactly what happened. So it's funny that Mig mentioned the Matrix because that's what code looked like to me when I started learning it. I had no idea what it was about. And but my assumption, though, and this is for those of you that are just have taught yourself how to code at some point or anything like that, at first you think you're just going to get it all, like Neo in the Matrix, and you jack in, and it's like, I know Kung Fu. But that's not what happens. That is not what happens at all. And it was almost demoralizing at first, because at first I thought I could learn a lot, and then I got hit by all these walls, and it felt like you know, it just felt like I couldn't get in. You know, I couldn't get in. I wasn't gonna, like, some people told me, oh, go just learn how to code, and then I go do it, and it's like, no, that shit's really hard. So it ended up being the hard way. I had to learn the hard way, like literally the hard way. I read a book called Learn Python the Hard Way, and and what was interesting about this book, it was very helpful because I started off teaching myself Python, which is a programming language, but I crossed over to another programming language called Ruby. And it's when I read this book. It's called Wise, Poignant Guide to Ruby. And this book was amazing because while I read that Learn Python the Hard Way book, it kind of like kicked me in the ass. You know, it was like kind of, oh, this is what programmers have to do. It was very, the way it came off to me was almost kind of intimidating still. But when I read this book, it was like full of, you know, chunky bacon references and cartoon foxes and weird poems. And it was just this strange book to teach somebody how to code. And it didn't even do a good job at teaching you how to code, but what it did was it made me smile. It made me feel good about starting to get into this. And that's something that really, really mattered to me. And it welcomed me in and got me started. So the other thing that happened was I would get stuck with programming problems. And I kept seeing this in forums, this acronym, MinSwan. I didn't know what it meant. I was like, what's MinSwan? But it turns out the creator of the Ruby programming language is actually Japanese. It's from Japan. And his name that he goes by in the programming community is Mats. So what this stands for actually is Mats is nice, so we are nice. So you'll see in like software, when you're learning in the forum, sometimes some of the programmers that are answering your questions online are kind of gruff with it. They're kind of mean, or you know, that kind of thing. And whereas in the Ruby community, it just felt right. It felt right to be a part of it because there was this saying of being nice to each other and welcoming beginners in. Pause for a second with the programming, and then something else came up. I had an opportunity to move to Uruguay. This is about 3.5 years ago, early 2011. And I was still trying to learn how to code. And one of the original Rails developers for Twitter, Ruby on Rails, actually started a software shop in Uruguay. And I got a chance to meet him, and he offered me a job to help, you know, run their engineering team as a business guy, but also teach me how to code. That was amazing. But I had this moment of crossover in 3 ways. One was, do I want to continue teaching myself how to code on my own and kind of go on this journey to become the awesome Neal that I can be? Or should I reflect on the fact that this experience in the past year of teaching myself how to code was so hard that there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way to not only teach myself, but all these other people that I knew wanted to learn this skill as well, how to do it. So we thought of this idea, me and Mike, my partner, and it was called Code Academy. We had this, we just threw out it, we just came up with a name, the domain was available, the .org at least, and that's what we wanted to make. We said, you know what, there should be a place where people can learn, and let's make that place. So this was just an idea on the side while I was trying to decide whether to go to Uruguay, but like I said, our name was Code Academy, right? You guys know we have a different name now, but I just want to clarify something. Our Code Academy is not probably the Code Academy that you guys are familiar with. Now I want to point something out. This shit right here. So their logo is missing an A, and if you don't know this, just go to the site and look at it again. We were the first Code Academy, and then they came afterwards in the Y Combinator batch with the kind of that name, and it kind of sucked because everybody was confused. And it's a great site. They do great things, and we both teach people how to code just in very different ways. So that was quite a pickle, but I'll talk about that more in a second. Anyway, one other thing happened. So you guys are familiar with a gentleman by the name of Harper Reed. He was the CTO of Threadless. He called me up, and turns out Harper became the CTO of Barack Obama's re-election campaign. Harper was a good friend of mine. He asked me and Mike to join the campaign to help lead some of the activities on the software product side, which was amazing. So I had this other opportunity to cross over into helping re-elect Leo of the Free World. Decided not to do that in pursuit of Code Academy. Decided not to move to Uruguay in pursuit of Code Academy. And I would like to think that his face looked like this. He was so disappointed that Mike and I didn't help get re-elected, but I was confident that he would do it. So anyway, this is version 1 of our website. I remember this was, oh my God, you could tear this up if you want to do a design exercise. But we got it out, we got it live, and right when we got this app up and told everybody about the school we wanted to start, we ran out of money. Like right then, like it was amazing. Like Mike looked over at me and said, Neal, look, I have $0 in my bank account. And I only had like maybe a couple thousand left. So my burn rate doubled, and we only had a few weeks left until the class started, and it was ridiculous, and we didn't know if it was going to work. But lo and behold, when we put that site up, that crazy, ugly-looking site, people from all over the world applied to be a part of that first program. It was amazing. And we didn't know this, but we had stumbled upon this movement, this opportunity, this learn to code thing. We had chosen to be a part of it before it had really taken off. And because of that, when we created this school, the whole world looked and decided that they wanted to relocate to Chicago to be a part of that movement. So we had humble beginnings. I convinced Andrew Mason over at Groupon to let me rent out 10 cubicles in their open football field-like sales area to teach a class, because I didn't know we didn't have a classroom yet. So we literally taught our first Code Academy class with a bunch of sales reps on phone calls next to us while we're trying to teach people how to program in Ruby on Rails at Groupon. I remember the day they went public. There was like champagne and balloons and all this ridiculous stuff, and we're just trying to learn how to code. So that was fun. Then we redid our website, so we started to grow up a little bit. We added a few more classes, user experience, HTML and CSS, on top of teaching web development, programming with Ruby on Rails, which is where I started. And then we got a chance to move into 1871. So 1871, if you haven't heard of it, it's a co-working space in downtown Chicago, but you might be more familiar with the event it represents, which is the Great Chicago Fire. What I think is cool about this map is that you can actually see the merchandise mart where 1871 is on the map where it was burnt. It's on Kinsey and Wells. So this is our classroom, what it looks like at 1871. This is one of them. Cool Hello World graffiti there. And then our other classroom, which is full of students learning. This has been an amazing journey because we've been teaching programming, 3-month programs, 11-week classes, and lots of people have learned how to code. So another crossover movement happened, where in addition to teaching people from all over the world, this guy walks into the room one day, Miram Emanuel, walks into the room and says, Neal, look, you have people from China, from Africa, from Europe, from all over the world moving here to learn how to code. Why don't you teach more Chicagoans? So we actually created a partnership with Chicago Public Schools, city colleges in Chicago, and the mayor and the city to teach not only students, but also train CPS teachers with our curriculum and help them bring a lot of the things that we learned in our classroom to Chicago students. So that was an excellent partnership and amazing crossover for our business. And then there's also this. So this company, 37 Signals. Mig spoke just a while ago, and what's amazing is I got a chance to meet both Mig and Jason Fried, the CEO, and a bunch of other amazing people there. What's incredible about 37 Signals is they invented the technology that we teach, Ruby on Rails. The Rails framework is what they created off of the Ruby programming language. So it was amazing to get to know them, but also to develop a partnership and a relationship with this company. So many of the Basecamp employees are mentors to our students now. They invested in us. We are the first and only ever investment that 37 Signals has ever made. And we were a part, or right there, when they had an interesting crossover movement where they decided to change their name from 37 Signals to Basecamp entirely. So when they decided to make that crossover, it's funny because we had just made a similar crossover into changing our name from Code Academy to the Starter League. And the reason we changed our name, well, there were multiple reasons, as you all know, but the main reason, honestly, the main reason was because we wanted to represent more than just a place to learn how to code. It's always been about more than just learning how to code. And that's one of the most important messages I wanted to share this morning, is that we're not here to just learn how to code. There's no just learn to code movement. The movement, as far as we're concerned, is to help people solve problems that make the world a better place, to get started, for beginners to be in. I don't want this code movement or software or technology or design to be this kind of exclusive bubble. We need to open it up to the rest of the world, because there's so many people out there that if they had the skills to make what's in their head real or to solve the problems they see every day, the world will be a much better place. And more people should have the opportunity to do that. And that's what we represent. So more than my story and me speaking to you here, I think this notion of crossover is embodied by the 1,000 plus members of the Starter League we now have. All of the students that have gone through our classes or that are currently going through our classes, I would implore you and encourage you, if you have an opportunity to run into somebody that went through a Starter League class, get to know them and their crossover story. Because what's amazing is that not only have I crossed over multiple times upon multiple times to have a better life here in Chicago among these amazing people and have the opportunity to speak in front of all of you, all of these amazing people that our school has had an opportunity to teach, their stories are what inspire me every day. They're the ones that decide to quit their jobs, to drop what they're doing, to put it all on the line and invest a ton of money in order to do something different, to do something new, and to do something better. So my final crossover moment is, as Kim mentioned, in addition to teaching our 11-week Learn to Code classes, we've transitioned into starting this other program called Starter School, which is a 9-month, super immersive, super intense grad school program. And I won't tell you the details about the program, but what's important here is that I decided that teaching in a modular fashion wasn't simply enough. I think it's good and it opens the doors and gets people started, but what Mike and I cared most about was taking people to a place where the alchemy of software programming, design, entrepreneurship, and product development all came together to produce a useful, meaningful solution that solves a problem that you care about. I know that's a redundant theme, but this is important because that's the recurring part of all this, in addition to everything that I was a part of at this point. Every student that we've had treats what they're doing like it's their first project. So while Biggie said it in about '93, Steve Jobs also said it in 2005 at his Stanford commencement address, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It's the same theme that I feel today that I wanted to impart upon you. So I'll end it with what Biggie said: treat everything like it's your first project. So that's what I would leave you guys with today. I'm excited for the Q&A, but I'm so honored to be here, so thankful to be a part of this community, and yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you. Talk about the morning test?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So I read about this thing called the morning test. I think it was another Steve Jobs thing. I'm a total fanboy. But the morning test is basically when you get up every day, you have to ask yourself if what you're about to do could be the best shit you could possibly be doing with your life, right? And so long as I got up every day, I took that test every day as I was doing all the work I was doing. When I worked the Sandbox, I was working at this venture capital firm, when I was working on these startups. And when I got up, because sometimes you have to get up 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it's hard. But when you get up, do you feel shitty? Are you not looking forward to your day? Or are you ready to take it on because you know how important the work you're about to do is? And that morning test is what I would always judge myself on. And I will tell you that this morning I got up fired up. Not only to meet you all, but right after this class, I'll be heading, this class, see, look at that. After this talk, I'll be heading right over to class with students like Fallon over there and teaching them how to do this. And that's what gets me fired up. So I would encourage all of you to take the morning test each and every day. And just check yourself and realize, am I about to go do the most meaningful shit I could be doing today? So that's the morning test. Yeah.
All right, so we'll open it up for Q&A.
Q&A.
What's the most important thing you learned from running barbershops?
Got it. Thank you for asking that. So what's the most important thing I've learned from running barbershops? There's a few things I learned, couple. I'll keep it short. One is, don't dive into a partnership. So what I did with the barbershop is I wrote this long 25-page business plan, and I shopped it around. I just went to every barbershop I could find on the south side of Chicago. And when I talked to barbershop owners, I wanted their feedback on whether this was a good idea. And after barbershop like 26, I convinced somebody who had one shop to let me take it over, work with him, and open up another. Here's a mistake I made. When you start a company with someone, it's almost like you're getting married, right? So you don't just meet somebody for the first time and then just run off and get married. And that's exactly what I did. So our values for what we wanted to do with our business were very different. He wanted to flip the business and build it really quickly and open up a bunch of shops. I wanted to go very slowly and build a prototype that worked really well and then figure out whether it was a repeatable model. So that was a major thing. The other thing I learned was accounting. So I hated accounting, I hated finance, I did not like learning it in college. But when it came to running this barbershop and understanding our receivables, our payables, all the different things that we had to work in the business, that's when it clicked. And that same pattern that I learned accounting with when I started at barbershop translated over to learning how to code and building software. Because I had to have something real that I had to do with it in order for it to stick. If it was just conceptual, then it wouldn't stick. So, awesome. Yes?
Where did you acquire your optimism, given
came from
Yeah.
and all your life.
Thank you. Yeah. So the question is where did I acquire my optimism, given the background and where I came from, and just that whole thing. And the reason I share that isn't to say that I wasn't like a happy kid. I had there was so much about childhood that was beautiful and amazing. I'm glad you asked that because I've never been asked that before. But I guess the answer would be, give me a second. No, I want to answer this right. So, yeah, when I hit this moment of reflection and I decided that, it's not about money. And I looked at my mom, I looked at my family, my sister, and when I saw these people living their lives, even though we didn't have a lot, there were still moments of happiness. And there were still ways to enjoy your life despite all the hard things around you. And whenever that happened, I felt the best, right? Those moments of happiness, those moments of joy when you're helping someone. So I don't know, that just went to an extreme. When I finally was on my own in college, when I had to figure out my own values and what I believed, that's what stood out the most. So I extracted that and I allowed that to help me shape the world rather than just being a part of it. So I don't know if that's the answer, but that's how I'm feeling. Yeah, thank you.
What are your 3 favorite books?
Oh, thanks for asking that. What are my 3 favorite books? That's easy. So, number 1, Getting Real. It's a, surprise, surprise, 37 Signals Now Basecamp book. Love that book. I read it all the time. It's by my nightstand. Number 2 would be, I'm sorry. I'm going to be lame. It's Rework. So number 2 is Rework. And there's a lot of the same things in both of those books, but that was the formative time for me. Those 2 books, when I read them, that changed the game. And there was one page I ripped out, though, as you all can think of. There's one page in the book Rework that says, don't quit your job. Clearly, I didn't follow that advice. But that worked for me. So anyway, those are 2. The other one's a curveball, which is Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So that's technically 2 books, but I love that story and the way Lewis Carroll wrote it. And it has nothing to do with programming or starting a business or anything like that, but being in a room full of creatives, that's what would just really, really instigate my creativity. And I'd read that every year I read that at least once because it's like you're reading a dream, and I just love that story. Thanks for asking that, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, thank you for asking that. So the question is with the inspiring story, do I talk to younger folks to help inspire them and share like the transition from learning how to read to now having a company? And yes, absolutely. So if there's ever any opportunity that any of you all have where I can share my story or help one of you share your story with people to inspire them that are struggling or just need some inspiration, I love to do that. It's a big part of what I felt I needed when I was growing up that I didn't have as much. And I'll say this, mentoring for a nonprofit, an international nonprofit called the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. Very amazing. I would encourage all of you to look into them. It's nifty.org. I've been working with Nifty since 2007 on talking to kids about how to build their own businesses and start their own companies. And I think that's a great place to start, to help kids in grade school and high school and areas of need understand that they can do it too. Yeah. So the question is, did I ever answer no to the morning test? And what did I do to change that? The answer is resoundingly yes. Plenty of times, and as you saw all of my transitions, right? Those crossovers that I talked about, quitting my job, leaving those places. It wasn't that I didn't like the place or that I didn't think it was a good place to be, but when I checked myself and said, am I doing what I feel like I could be doing best? When that answer was no, I was on the extreme end where I would just say, you know what, I'm going to start anew again. And then somehow you have to channel the energy to be able to treat it like you're starting out new again, like you're an intern, like you're hungry. And that's what I was able to apply to every new step that I took. Thanks for asking that. Awesome. Sure. So the question is she got the perception that the Chicago community has been very collaborative and supportive, and she wants me to talk about how that played into this story coming to life. And that's a huge thing. And if I had more time, I would have talked about all the amazing people and opportunities and just serendipitous moments that happen in order for this to be possible. But I will say that Chicago is an amazing place to be right now. I had to make a tough call when I had this opportunity to move to Uruguay, right? To learn how to code. And for selfish Neal, that would have been great. But when I saw what was happening in this community and how people started to just almost like this world just started to blossom of creatives and technology and helping people. And just the culture around here, it's malleable. Like Chicago isn't complete yet. There's no like thing to label Chicago as when it comes to a community yet. That was fun to me because I was like, I want to be a part of this. But then all the people I met wanted to help. There's people in this room that are probably going to connect after I'm done talking that are going to lead to new opportunities and helpful things. And that's what this is about. And I think Chicago's on the path to be one of the most welcoming, inclusive, and collaborative cities for software, technology, and design. Sure. Yeah, so the question is advice for students that are trying to learn graphic design and coding when it can be intimidating. And by the way, I went to Northwestern and was in CESP as well, the School of Education, so that's awesome. So I will say that it is indeed intimidating, but what's awesome about the world is that that's starting to change. There's this transition happening both online and offline where there are places you can go to get started that are more welcoming. But I will say this, the most important thing for me to overcome that intimidation and that fear and that doubt that I experienced when I was first starting off was to have something that I wanted to make. You know, so have something that you want to do with the skills that you think you want to learn. And if you just, something small, it could be some website that you don't like, that you want to redesign or change. It could be like something, some small project that you have. But whatever it is, find something that you can start to work towards. And then in addition to that, because this community is so welcoming, try to find somebody that's willing to mentor you and pull you up. And they don't have to be the greatest mentor of all time. Just find somebody that's a little bit better than you. And if you can find that person, and convince them to just give you advice and help you, you'll be in a good place. Yeah, right. So the question is about mentorship and the relationships that I established and how I got to where I am now. Oh, so yeah, this is a huge part of this entire story is asking other people for help. And then I think the important thing there is to make sure that when you're reaching out to people or connecting to people and seizing these opportunities, that you're not selfish about it, right? You don't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, will you help me with this thing? You have to get to know them. You have to do your homework and understand who these people are. And if there's somebody that you want to meet, that you want to talk to, on one side, you need to understand, you need to show your heart. I think that's the biggest thing that I was able to do. The way I convinced all these ridiculous people to give me these opportunities and to hire me or to invest in me or whatever, it was all because I showed them what I cared about. And if you show people what you care about and you can find a way to give them enough empathy to understand and feel what you're trying to do, there's just something intangible about that makes people say yes. So yeah, so the question is, do I keep in touch with former students? And if so, where are they now? So there's more than 1,000 of them, but yes, we do. So we are doing our best. There's some alums in the room. The alums, could you raise your hand? Oh, there we go. We got 1, 2. Oh, you're not an alum yet, Fallon, but you're here. So what happens is they're all over the world, right? There's a bunch in Chicago, but they're all over the world. And on our website, we've had this 2.5-year-long campaign of capturing their stories and starting to share them. And we have all of them connected in one place, but we're now starting to share those stories to the broader community. As far as what students are doing now, it's all across the board. There's a bunch of creatives, designers, developers, people that become product managers. And then the most amazing examples are the students that decide to go off and start their own businesses and companies. And there's been a number of them. So one example, maybe if you all know Jimmy Odom in Chicago, he's CEO of a company called We Deliver, which just went through Techstars Chicago. Really proud of him and his story. And there are so many others. And what's also incredible about the community is that so many of our alums hire our students and alums, so it just becomes like this almost incestuous factory of cool startups and companies and job hiring. But beyond that, I would say that, yeah, the community is strong and we're a part of it. But what I'm more excited and passionate about and just proud of is the fact that we instigated a larger movement of lots of other people starting their own schools, their own programs, their own websites to teach people how to code and design software. So that's been the cooler thing. So it's not just the starter league, it's all the other people that have decided to be a part of this movement to create things with technology. So yeah, so were there any moments where the community wasn't as helpful, when there was pushback or negativity? Absolutely. Absolutely, and sometimes it was the community, sometimes it was just my state of mind. Sometimes I had doubt, like I didn't, when I looked at this world of software and learning how to code and programming, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. I didn't see a lot of women. I didn't see a lot of folks from different backgrounds and diversity. So that was like in and of itself intimidating, right? So just to see this startup community and entrepreneurs, and like you just didn't know that you belonged. Like with my background and growing up, and I studied the background of people I admired, the CEOs and the stories and the companies that I wanted to embody, and most of them did not have backgrounds that I could relate to, right? And they had positions where they were able to learn things and be exposed to things that I had no idea to be exposed to. So that was a struggle in and of itself. But I will say that even when people say no, like most people are going to think whatever idea you have is a shitty one first. So most of them are going to say no. So you will have to develop a thick skin, and you will have to be the first person to believe. You have to be the first person to believe. So whatever you're trying to do, you have to start out with the assumption that no one else believes this but me. And my job is to prove that this belief can be truth. So that's, I set out to do that. So with all the amazing mentorship and support and collaboration Chicago has, there also is a bit of skepticism and doubt, particularly in the investment community of different startups. You have to be revenue generating, you have to have traction in order to get investment. So with that in mind, you have to prove your worth and build a real business that has real revenues and that you believe in before anyone else can. And I really love that here, because it's not faking it till you make it. It's like make it or try something else. So yeah. Thanks for asking that. So the question is about investment and how that played into our story and how that supported us or not. And with investment, it's actually interesting. We have kind of a unique story. So as I said, I had a background in venture capital and investing. I got into it early on in college, which was rare, and I was lucky. But even with all the connections and people I knew and opportunities that I had to raise money, when I started our school, I first went down the path where I thought I needed money to get it started. I thought I needed money to get it started. So we spent a bunch of not useless, but almost useless time trying to prepare documents and prove out that what we had was a good idea that was worth someone giving us money to do. Because that was the game I had played before. I was on the other end of the table where I could invest in companies. Now I had to be the one to get invested in. And man, I'm so glad that didn't happen. So here's what actually happened. So we were playing this game of trying to get investment, and as I said, Mike and I were broke. We ran out of money. So we needed money, and we ran out of money, and the school was about to get started, and we didn't know what to do. And we couldn't prove, the investors were always very careful, and they didn't want to give us money because we couldn't prove that this was a good idea. Now, just to be clear, we were ground zero. We were patient zero. There was no other school like ours at the time. There's over 100 now in the world, which is ridiculous, but there was none. If there was one, I would have known because I would have been a student at it. So we started this first school, so it was unproven. There was no clear identification of there being a need in the market except my own personal anecdote. So with that in mind, I couldn't convince those investors to invest until the very last minute. And just a few weeks before we launched our first class, I got this document, this email saying, all right, we're good to go. Here's your convertible debt deal. Here's the, the $250,000 that you were trying to raise. What's funny is remember that world picture I showed you where people from all over the world applied? That had happened just a few days before, where I realized that we got over almost 100 applications from people all over the world that wanted to apply. And at the time, the class was, $6,000, right? You do the math. There's over 100 people that want to pay you $6,000, and you have these investors that are lined up. What do? You find a way to teach more students, right? So instead of taking on investment, we decided to double our class size, not actual class size, but we hired our instructor not part-time but full-time, and we had 2 groups of 35 students rather than the original 12 that we thought we had the capacity for. So we ended up not needing that investment to get started, which was amazing. So this is what bootstrapping is about, right? So bootstrapping meaning building your business off of your own revenue rather than trying to seek outside capital. So that was huge. That was an aha moment for me. And we've also, we've always been, profitable from day one off of, the actual value we're providing to our students, not to any other third party. So the final point I'll make on that is, I mentioned 37 Signals. Now Basecamp also invested in us. This was a 1.5 years into the business, and that investment isn't a traditional investment. So when Jason Fried and David Hinmeyer Hansen, the partners at Basecamp, decided to work with us to help us, instigate this movement, it wasn't about the money. Jason had already been spending a disproportionate amount of time advising me, helping me think through how to make this school great and the best experience possible for our students. And he just said, you know, if there's any way for us to formalize this relationship, that would be great, because I want to justify to my employees why I'm spending so much time with you. So what happened was a very small amount, they decided to contribute to the company just so they could say they were, you know, an owner in the business. But really, it's never been about the money. We've never needed their money. It's always been about all the amazing team members' values and ideas they have to help us make our student experience the best it could possibly be. So yeah, I guess that's the final question. So I'll close out by saying, if there's anything I could do for any of you in Chicago or beyond to be a part of this community or anything else, I'm always here. I'm more than happy to help, and I'm thankful to a lot of people in this room for making it possible for me. So thank you guys so much, and have a great Friday. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.